When I was 12 years old, they told me to go to my uncle's barbershop and start sweeping the floor. I didn't hesitate and I went. When I saw the opportunity come, I immediately took action and took it. But what made me have the confidence was because I was in the business for so long. Now, I've been in it since I was 12 years old. I had 10 years in it already. I think one of the big thing was not going to college, because that probably would have changed my focus and probably would have confused me on what I wanted to do. Because I was so honed in on it, I was very confident to skip the college route and know that this was my route to go, to be a business owner.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Be Your Own Boss podcast. This episode of the Be Your Own Boss podcast is brought to you by Ad Hoc Gulf, systems that your business cannot live without. The interview, the conversation that we're going to have today goes beyond just being your own boss. It goes into the realm of passive income. Being your own boss, building a business is one thing, and then generating passive income in a way that frees yourself, that's the other ultimate level. And that's what is talked about in the great books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and so many other books and podcasts, right? So to be honest, when I was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I was thinking like, is this like, those things sounded like fairy tale to me. I mean, I was not sure if it can happen in real life. We have today in the virtual studio with us someone who has actually done that. He is a barber by profession, and he's a real estate investor, and not just any other real estate investor. He is the kind of investor where he went to buy a property, he bought the entire street. Can you believe that? He just bought the entire street. He said, I want to buy the all the properties here on this side of the street. That's how powerful a real estate investor he is. And he's been doing real estate investor and his barber profession for over quarter of a century almost. Ladies and gentlemen, Dennis Balonze, the founder of Barber Up, which is the barber product, the personal care products that he sells online, and a real estate investor owning multiple properties in the United States, joining us on the studio here. Dennis, welcome to the Be Your Own Boss podcast.
How you doing?
It's a pleasure to have you here. Good,
Thank
man.
you.
How are you?
Thank you for having me.
So Dennis, like we always do on the Be Your Own Boss podcast, we start with your story right from the beginning. So tell us about your parents, your siblings. Where were you born? Tell us about your childhood memories.
Well, I just want to get back to your introduction there when you said I bought the whole street. That sounds pretty exciting. So it's probably good if you knew the backstory of why the street was bought, but that's why we're going to get into, that's what we're going to unpack in this podcast.
Definitely. Yes.
But
we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, so my parents immigrated to the U.S. in Paterson, New Jersey, 40, 50 years ago. And they came as skilled workers. And they instilled that on us, on my brother and my sister, to be a skilled worker. So, when I was 12 years old, they told me to go to my uncle's barbershop and start sweeping the floor. I didn't hesitate and I went. And for my brother, they said for him to go into do heating and air conditioning with my other uncle. And he didn't hesitate and he went and did that. That wasn't meant for us to just keep doing that. It was just for us to be exposed to different work and see where it would click for us and what would we want to do. So we just did it. And for me, barbering just stuck with me.
Yeah.
I kept on going. I didn't not want to go, so that was probably a good sign. And then in high school, I found it as a good side hustle to do it on the side and, pay for my gas money, whatever money I was spending. It was paying for that and kind of stuck through there. And then when I was in high school, I went into barbering. I got my license. I skipped the whole college thing, saved up some money. And by the time I was like 23 years old, 22, I bought my first barbershop.
Wow.
That's
You
basically
bought
how
your
it
first
started.
barbershop.
Yeah. It was an existing barbershop. It was operating for about 80 years until I came there in 2001 and just took it over. There was an existing clientele already. The clientele was amazing.
Yeah.
It was an affluent area. We serviced New York commuters. So, no, the town was commuting to New York every day. So, great people. And it was a great history of clientele for 80 years until I got there.
So this was like the people who would live there in New Jersey and commute to New York for
Yes.
work every day.
Mhm. Yeah, it was
Wow.
one of those towns. And actually, the back parking lot had a train station where we were able to hop on the train and take it directly to New York City. So it was a New York direct train. And
Got
we had that in our back parking lot with an entrance. So we had an entrance from the back parking lot and an entrance from the front of the street. So it was very accessible to come in and out of the shop.
Now, I don't know if things are very different in the US than here in Dubai. When you bought this, this barbershop back then when you were 22, right? Did you have to put in a lot of money as, because there is the value of the business is like,
Yeah.
depending on the number of clients and kind of business they do.
Yeah. Yeah, it was expensive. I mean, I worked for 3 years straight to save up the money to buy it. And I was living home at the time with my parents, so I was able to pull it off. I kept my expenses low. I wasn't married, no girlfriend, nothing. Just worked hard for 3 years and waited for the right opportunity to come.
Wow. This
And
is
then
brilliant. Yeah.
when I saw the opportunity come, I immediately took action and took it. But what made me have the confidence was because I was in the business for so long. Now, I've been in it since I was 12 years old. I had 10 years in it already. So when I was 22, I was ready to go. There was no hesitation. I knew the business. I'd been around it long enough. I knew what I was doing. I knew the clientele well. I grew up in that area. And this is basically the clientele that I wanted to align with when I took that shop. So had very precise clarity.
Yeah. It's amazing to have that kind of clarity at that age, right? At 22.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the big thing was not going to college, because that probably would have changed my focus and probably would have confused me on what I wanted to do. Because I was so honed in on it, I was very confident to skip the college route and know that this was my route to go, to be a business owner, entrepreneur, to make my own decisions, make my own future. And that's basically, how it happened.
To be your own boss.
Yeah.
Did you have to take any other like loan or something to fund that purchase, or was it all
No.
what you had saved up?
No, it's everything I saved up. I paid it cash.
Wow. This is amazing. So tell us about like your entry into the real estate business. I mean, when and how did it occur to you that you want to be a real estate investor?
This is where the fun begins. This is one of the greatest things that happened to me because, starting your own business at such an early age like that, I saw my future. And when I saw my future, it was like, do I want to be barbering my whole entire life? Because that's what the people around me did, like my uncle and the former owner that I bought the barbershop from. They all did that. They all worked until their high 70s, early 80s, and they did it for their whole lives. So I knew that this was a stepping stone, and I didn't want to do it for my whole entire life. I love what I do, but it's not something that I want to do forever. So I needed to make a decision. And the decision was, do I become a multi-unit barbershop owner, or should I become a multi-unit real estate investor? So it just seemed more easy to me to become the multi-unit real estate owner because, the business was very like high volume. It was, I had to put a lot of time into it. I had to be there all the time. I had to make sure customers are happy. It was very demanding. So it was just easier to me to think about buying a rental, putting a tenant in it. They'll pay me rent every month. I don't have to be there, and I could just keep on cutting hair. I mean, that's a great thing. It just seemed a little too hard for me to open another barbershop and then hire employees and train them and da-da-da. I just felt like real estate was going to give me the ultimate freedom in the future if things did work out. Yeah. So I decided to go that route. I couldn't take both routes. I couldn't take both routes.
Yeah, you couldn't have taken both. And also the even if you went the franchising route, like if you franchise, you had to train people and make sure they're doing exactly what.
Yeah, I actually looked into that, and I looked into a company that handles franchising, and it was going to be a big deposit, and the market was wide open for me to do it. I mean, wide open. There was very minimal competition back then. But again, I decided to do the real estate route because it was just easier for me. It was less capital intensive at that time. And I just felt like the opportunity was going to be better for my future than it would be to be multi-unit shop owner. For me, that's for me.
Dennis, I want to touch upon that a little bit more here. So was there someone that you looked up to in terms of real estate as an real estate investor, or did you have did you read some books that told you that real estate investing is an option and it's good? How did that come about?
I don't know. In the United States, we have a bookstore called Barnes and Noble. So back in early 2000, we didn't have Amazon to download books from. So, we would have to go to Barnes and Noble. We would pick a book. I was always in the personal development center and how to make money and how to do this. But it was a combination of two things, reading those books and learning from my uncle and how he did things. Because his business model was the same way. He would cut hair and just buy real estate. And he was so wealthy by the time he was doing it he had 40 years by the time I showed up in his business. And I was 12 years old. So he amassed a lot of wealth through real estate while he was cutting hair. So to give you an example, he owned his own building. He had 3 stores. One of them was his own barbershop, and then an electronics store, and like a sneaker store, and like 8 apartments above it. And he bought it 40 years ago. So, and he's sitting there, he's making cash flow from everything around him, plus his own business. And here I am, I'm 12 years old, and I'm kind of looking at that. I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive. He could retire at this point, but he still wants to keep going. So that kind of rubbed off on me. And then, I'd come home and my dad was always talking about it, and he had some rentals. So he would throw me in the back seat and drive around and pick up rent, and told me not to get out of the car because it would be dangerous. And I remember those things. So it rubbed off onto me that probably real estate was the way to go. And then reading the books definitely reinforced real estate was the way to go.
Wow. And what was your first real estate investment?
So the goal was, after I got the barbershop, was to save my money. And at the time I had $20,000 locked in my mind for some reason. I figured that would be 10% down on a $200,000 purchase. So the first $20,000 I made, I went out and I bought a 2-family house not far from where I work, maybe about 20 minutes. And I rented it out, and that was my first purchase. I didn't live there. I was still living home at the time. This was the first year I was in business. And that's how it started. First 20 grand, 10,000 down. It was a $160,000 purchase, 2-family house. And it was the worst investment I made, but it was the most I learned so much from it.
Yeah. Before we talk about the learnings on that from that first purchase, okay, I wanted to also understand. Now, I'm based in Dubai, and a lot of people here, we may not have the kind of systems that you have in the US. So if you could just explain that to us. You buy a property worth $160,000, and you have 10% down, right? So you have 20,000 cash with you. So
Yeah.
the bank is giving you the other 90% on. So do they, I mean, do you mortgage the property with the
Oh yeah.
bank? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
And
yeah, I'm sorry.
what's the process of, based on what does the bank give you that loan to buy that property? Usually, like, if you, for example, here, if I go to the bank and say, I want a home loan, okay, they would ask me what my income is, and then based on my income, they would see what's my capability of paying the EMI for the month, right? And then they will calculate and say, this is the max loan that we can give you. And then the percentages are also very different here, right? I mean, if I want to buy something for 1,000,000 dirhams here, I need to have at least 300,000 in cash with me to be able to buy that. But things are different in the US. So just wanted to understand, like, it sounds like a very lucrative market for someone who's here in Dubai to go and invest in the US, actually.
Well, to make this one point, the U.S., United States, has probably the best tax advantages when it comes to real estate in the world. The U.S. has the best advantages. I'll touch on a couple. Number one, we have different programs offered by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are government-backed loans. So just give you one example. If you're a first-time home buyer, there's a program out right now where you can go out and buy a 4-unit apartment building, 4 units, and you can, and all you need is 5% down, but you would have to be an owner occupant for, I think, like 2 years. So if you lived in one apartment for 2 years and rented out the other 3, all you would need is 5% down. That's amazing. We didn't have that.
Wow.
Yeah, we didn't have that when, I mean, we had programs back then, but that, like, if I'm a first-time home buyer, I would be all over that. I'd go find a 4-plex somewhere. I go live in it. I'll rent the other 3. I'll put 5% down, and then after 2 years, I'll rent it out and then move to another one and buy another one, and just keep doing that. We call that house hacking in the U.S. here. When you live in one, like if you buy a duplex, you live in one, you rent out the other. We call that house hacking because you have a tenant helping you pay down whatever expenses you have on a property. Sometimes you can live for free. So in addition to the other tax advantages that in the US, we could write off our interest on our loans. So if I'm a high net worth, if I'm a high net worth income employee, I could buy real estate and then write off the interest against my income. And another great advantage is we could depreciate the value of the real estate minus the land value. So if a property is worth 200,000, and let's say the land underneath is worth 100, we minus out the 100 of the land and we take the 100,000 of the actual building structure, and we could depreciate that every year. We could take a piece of depreciation and put that against our income. So we have interest. We could write off taxes, our annual property taxes, and we could depreciate. And here's another bonus. Here's another bonus. Let's say you made a bonus at work and you made a big amount of money that year because you did something great. And you bought, let's say you bought a new piece of investment property. You could take 28 years of, or there's a certain amount of years of depreciation, and take it all at once in 1 year. It's called cost segregation. That's another great bonus. So you could compress all those years of depreciation into 1 year and just put it right against your income.
So to offset that big income that you got this year.
Exactly. So there's some really great tax advantages to be in real estate.
Yeah. And also the banking system, right? Like that's
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting, very powerful. Pay 10%, the bank gives you the other 90%.
Yes.
What's the kind of interest rate on this 90%?
Right now, our interest rates are kind of high. We're like in the high sevens, maybe low eights right now. But
Mm.
when I was starting in 2001, the market was completely different than what it is now. We ran into some problems here in the U.S. In '05 and '08 with banks giving out mortgages to the borrowers that couldn't afford it. So we had a housing crash from that, and I started before that. I started in 2001. So that housing crash kind of helped me get through that first purchase I made, because that was a really bad purchase I made, which, if you're getting into real estate, there's a lot of little details I'd like to share with you about that first purchase. But because of the market giving loans to anybody, I was able to get out on that property for a very good profit and then move that into new properties. So to answer your question, our mortgage industry is constantly evolving and always changing over the
Mm.
years, and we investors have to adapt with that and learn how to work with, the lending and the interest rates.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you also call that EMI? We call it EMI here, the monthly payment that you pay to the bank. Repayment.
Principal, mortgage, interest, or we say PITI, principal, interest, taxes, insurance.
Okay. Simple interest, taxes, and insurance.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, you have to pay the monthly payments to the bank, and your rent from this the property that you bought
Yeah.
there was higher than the payment that you had to make to the bank. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way I calculate it is you take our gross income and we minus our expenses. So we always have to pay property tax. We always have to pay insurance. Those are the main two expenses on a property. And then you could factor in some other things like repairs, vacancies, and then we get a number called a net operating income. So when we get the NOI, that is before debt service. So then if there's money left over, we calculate how much our monthly payment is going to be for mortgage. We minus that, and that's our net profit.
Mm. So the monthly payment of the mortgage is like, does that spread over a certain number of years? Then
Yeah, we amortize the payment. So you take $100,000 loan, we can amortize it over 30 years or 15 years, however long you want to pay. So if you go with 15 years, you're going to have a higher payment. If you spread it out over 30 years at a fixed rate, your payment's going to be lower. You have a fixed amount for the next 30 years to pay off the loan.
got
So
it. And do you get to decide, or does the bank decide how many years depending on your age?
we could decide.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Yeah.
we decide if we want to pay 30 years, if we want to pay in 15 years. There's also 5-year arms where we could, this was very popular in the early 2000s when interest rates were kind of lower. We were able to lock in a rate for 5 years and then it would adjust. So the problem is, after 5 years, when the market adjusts, the investor, had it probably, let's say, for 3%, and now it adjusted to 6%, after the 5 years. So now their cash flow just went to zero because they were relying on the 3%. So those are some of the risks that investors face when they get into real estate.
Yeah, I think interest rate fluctuation is something that's global as well. I mean, here we have those options of, like, the first, you can have it locked for the first 1 year or 2 years, not 5 definitely, but then things change over, and then the number of years is here decided by your age and also by, like, your income, because they're looking at it as you're going to pay the mortgage. Okay, so can you pay the mortgage? What kind of income do you have? So they're looking at it from that perspective. And if I'm in my mid 40s right now, and if I go and ask for a 30-year loan, then I'm going to give me, they say that, in 30 years you'll be 75. So they
Yeah.
will not give me that. They'll probably give me maybe 15 max, or maybe mostly they may give me 10 years
awesome.
loan, which makes the EMI or the mortgage payment, right? It's very high.
Yeah. We have different programs. So, we can do the traditional route, go to the bank, show them our W-2, how much we make every year, and then they decide on what we could borrow. For an investor, we have options where we can go to a lender that doesn't look at our income. They look at the property and the income of the property, and then make their decisions based on that, and then pull our credit to see if we're credit worthy. And they look at how much experience we have with real estate. And if we have good credit and we have good experience with real estate, we may take a little bit higher interest than the bank would, but it would be a loan based on the investment, not us.
Wow. That's very, very powerful.
Yeah. I think it's been, my 25 years of doing this, I think now is probably the best time to be buying, because the lending programs are amazing. Yes, we have higher rates, but we just have more lending opportunities now than we ever did. But the main key is that live where you want to live, invest where it makes sense. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. That's a good point. Because where I live is very expensive. For every property I have here, it's kind of like a barber working for you, but not in the barbershop. Every rental income I get is another barber working for me without having a barber.